It was a, well, I'm not sure. Well, turning this man over to 30 saying, Father, what? Surrender. And rose up. Right. Here we are. At the church. start, they open fire. So everything Army by on the brand support. We get trouble. There was vendor brand at that point. They did not work together before any of them happened. Some had just the weapon here. The brand intention is man wasted for another year of Army between San Carlos school. Then sent out the point. Idea of fighting battle never interfered. What's that? My streaming bill hit $180 a month for channels I don't even watch. They get mad. I got friendless.
I spent an hour on hold just to be told to reset my box. I just did that. Oh my god.
Morning, I didn't get mad. I got friendly. 50 plus live channels, thousands of on-demand sites, all starting at just $6.99 a month. Start your free trial today. It's gonna be as long as it's kind of raw that he's trying to come. Okay. Grant is not at College. Grant actually has breakfast. 1 mile north. Orders. Very attention. Okay. What was Cameron Watson? German. First day of the Battle of Shiloh. About 40,000 people tried the Union Army. Again, pushing forward. It's the largest attack in American history up to that time. And finally got to Pittsburgh landing. Officers getting over headward. Grant immediately began to assess the situation. Battle clarified his mind. Mental income. Deployed soldiers to straggle back into the area and began to plug this defensive line. Right. I'm not moving. That's it. I'm right behind you. They were on the battlefield, not covered with air. They could start my trees. What's their assessment? I can't tell you what I do. If Pittsburgh landing falls, Grant knows his army. Better fight. The Trapped Army hits the force back along the Tennessee River, and Grant will utilize his best to find a delaying action to hold out until our fuel and reinforcements come up. He has a whole division of followers here, and if he goes around and he's off to different divisions throughout the day, on the way to be here, he won't. Confidence, and he was a great person in the day and age when that was a very important skill out on the battlefield. We were attempting to move by the enemy in our right flank. Sure. Come on, sir. The bigger first. Any reinforcements? Where are you? No field. Take a line. Hold your position. Yes, sir. But they will come. At the Battle of Shiloh, Sherman and Grant, while they had never been involved in Lewisburg, they will come into this as this wonderful unit who will turn out to be one of the great partnerships. Some of the other fragments of the Union Army dissolved in panic retreat. Sherman closed the Confederate force. Nevertheless, Grant knew that he may need that while I was fighting. But their great confusion followed on how they should get to that Grant recognizes that once it's chaos, everything is on, and we have to get something to regain control. Not when you look, people are big and fun. Go black, go. And you're into the back, just kind of do it now. Yes, sir. First day doesn't go well. But it's chaos, noise, friction, snow, and about. Nobody gets it right. Nobody. Brand new days to learn from hard experience. And how it's going to turn out in spite of all the fall back, stretch, holding, business lines, making it great space. To hold out until our reinforcements. The word right now belongs to the transferring at all hands. Some more fun is correct. From barrage and nightfall at the Navy ships in the river. Order. Grant on the battlefield does not appear to let the unit fail him. He's already in there. He's a fighter. That's one of the things that brought me on. That sense of endurance, the sense that this isn't going to be easy. I'm not looking when you get into that. Grant has been falling back throughout it. And the Confederate commander now receives Thompson. Wades into the battle himself. Well, he's at a constant character. And all of a sudden, Thompson is hit in the back of the leg. Does Thompson finish? Johnson, second in command, here who's talking to John Beauregard over. And Beauregard believes they had the Union Army right where they wanted them. Grant used the terrain extraordinarily well. And they constructed a defensive line along the steep ravine. The Confederates had to go down into the they made one charge out of the ravine into the whirlwind of Union artillery. They are driven back and by orders are taken down the Confederate line as the villain does. Grant, sitting on horseback watching as the Confederates fell back in. That not being yet by chance. Grant was all his determination. He thinks that like by the time darkness falls, death is that day. time to retreat. They gathered out parts, Grant Daly is on and full day. The office expected a better translation. And so he believed you understood the orders went out to all its division commanders at first light. Wherever you are, nothing you can have to find another commander in Shiloh that's going to attack our nation. Everybody else is thinking, oh my goodness, there's no way. I think that man looks at this equation differently than everything. Man failed and had to look at the dark side of how to be resilient, and he gives an extra source of strength that most other commanders don't have the ability to do. You have the gift and no more and this are good and wouldn't fit at Shiloh. What's the Confederates and you want to Hard. Yard of Wars. Military life, that's what you know. Ulysses S. Grant was. Today, there is this oh, so many things over the years. The greatest general of his time. They're a genius. How do you butcher it? A corrupt president. You didn't get lucky. Ulysses S. Grant is this perfectly average, humble individual from a poor, hard-to-travel background with a lot of hard times and failures in his life. But he's got all these relationships. Lead the nation. He all and whom he aspires to be. Come out of shower looking period. Grant was all as a hero. And all of a sudden people are asking, what happened? Tragically, the tragic rapid response overshadowed the fact the victims are reaching questions that explain their survival and ways beyond the normal. People are brain by faith. Time to begin preparing. And then you had someone like Grant, very go-getter, jumping, scrappy. I wanted to finish off with less better army at silos, but are having time to organize themselves and act for it. They're well together. Stay quite active. Get prepared for battle. Especially in General, I don't like that smoke. Please, ready for cause. Just for your retreat. Tap. Trains coming in every day. Reinforcing. And sir, I differ. This is a retreat. Railroad grenadiers on the track. There's empty trains coming in and loaded ones going out. Rolling. Enough, Grant. After the trial, I'm talking. Yes, but a weapon. It can be used for an adversary that's on the run. Man recognizes there's an opportunity. He also knows that there's a lot of future. And we don't take advantage of it. And Grant great music. That's the corn. Orange is already been back. Man, we're going to trade the bill at $180 a month for channels I don't even watch. They get mad. I got
Hour on hold just to be told to reset my box. I didn't get mad. I got it.
the favorite classic question disappeared overnight without warning. I didn't get mad. 50 plus live channels, thousands of on-demand titles, all starting at just $6.99 a month. Start your free trial today.
Hey, this is an opportunity for a chemist. Atlanta, we should go to Vicksburg, and what happened is maybe first the Army and things go down in the West.
Keep in mind that those years are really the West is where Grant is. And there's the future. Like the Union Army again, essentially the Army of the Northern Virginia. Please.
So while Grant has been demoted out west, Robert E. Lee is taking over the Army of Virginia. And the average result of the either is the Army doing undermanned with better army.
In the East, think of experience with the general back then. Bad, trending,
15 properties here, and it's entirely finished.
By this time, France is in a bad situation too. That second year of the war is pretty good for him. In fact, he called it the darkest days of the war. Look how I'm fine when you're in war. How it hasn't down. Hello, Banner.
Little and man was such a guy. Oh, my God, Lincoln? Hell.
This. Oh, my child. Just a piece. You can hold the next one. You can take this. Open it. Out.
Controlling resources allows food and other goods to move freely across the Mississippi and get onto rail cars and feed the Confederacy. Without it, the Confederacy can be cut. But for any army, capturing Vicksburg would be a daunting task. Vicksburg is on the east bank of the Mississippi. From what our 300 feet above a horseshoe-shaped bend of the Mississippi. The line consists of 9 major next by continuous line country by Pacific, stretched for more than 8 miles, and 172 big guns.
But the General Chief was McClellan. And the replacement that he pitches upon is Henry Halleck. Prince Halleck east. And so finally, the cloud part. Halleck gives France the authority to command as France sees fit. And the interesting thing is, it takes France all sort of organized and efficient. I would call Lance Vicksburg a disaster. The centerpiece of the war. But Vicksburg was incredibly difficult to get at.
Starts this campaign. Grant is on the western side of the river. Vicksburg, of course, is on the eastern side of the river.
Vicksburg was a street, gigantic swamp. He needs to put his troops on open ground, but the only open ground is the road on the eastern side of the river. So how are you going to get troops to the road?
All of these are efforts to get around the city without having to run those batteries, which is their greatest use.
Among these operations, excavation of canals, crawl, in the rampage of the work on it now. Technology back in very
against it. Thurman says, I want this on paper that I'm against it. And Grant can live with that.
What it has.
And while the boat will run the battery, Grant will march it down the western side of the river. Ironclads provide protection for his transports. The transports are there because they are going to move his troops from one side of the river to the other, and then run a land campaign to come in from the east side.
All the bales of cotton, bales of hay, stacked around the enemy, multiple sound, as well as out on the subject to report incoming rounds. He doesn't pocket like a single file line will slowly bridge with
Set fire to the opposite stall, take the slip home. Oh. Amazing.
Admiral Davis reported pays very close attention where the shot and shell are hitting his vessel. They are hitting his smokestack. Almost none are getting any lower to where the vital parts of your boat are situated. And he realizes the near bank of Mississippi. Ordered orders all his boats from the shoreline. So close did they come that almost all considered shots are now flying harmlessly overhead.
Getting through. We'll take Vicksburg in a few days. Okay.
For now.
These families say things like, message to Admiral Porter. Condition close to the men are in.
Due to the success of the passage on the night of April the 16th, Grant sent for 24,000 soldiers across the Mississippi.
I think what we see in Vicksburg is maturity of Grant, the decisions that he makes. It's an extraordinary campaign at the operational level. How do armies move point to point? How do they sustain themselves? All separate from battle itself. Grant's decision to run those batteries, the determination, the grit, is utterly part of his makeup. The loss of ships running Vicksburg batteries isn't one.
All the labor, hardship, and exposure, the accomplishment. Ground. Any side of the river.
Now run the battery, cross over the Mississippi River, and Grant is now making progress. Meanwhile, in the Eastern Theater, it's not going well.
1 point.
Chances. Maybe these guys outnumbered 2-1. This is the whole idea of one Confederate to fight 3 Union soldiers. You're in truth. I'm starting to feel like this is winnable. And so there is a response politically, and everyone is watching to see Grant.
In May, they transform that OB round into movie. Now that might be only the beginning, saying, because now, once on the ground, that's when the campaign really happens, I fear. Once on the Vicksburg side of the river, people would have expected Grant to march north towards Vicksburg.
And yet, he doesn't do anything like that. First of all, you don't attack where the enemy expects you to attack, from the south. Second of all, in command of the roughly 30,000 Vicksburg Pemberton's fortifications are wildly strong.
Ran off moving northeasterly direction. That's Pemberton's line of isolate from Vicksburg and moved. Over the next 17 days, Grant's army will push deep into the interior of the state.
However, in the state capital of Jackson, other Confederate was beginning to organize the command just the Rams were really facing two separate Confederate armies, deep in enemy areas, with a extraordinarily limited violence.
There is actually great risk for that. He turns his back on Pemberton's army nearly the same size as his own. And are always thinking to himself in the environment of the enemy. He knows John Pemberton. Knows he's not get arrested. And he thinks, if I strike quickly, I can beat them and keep there before they join, and therefore it's an advantage to have this central position. And that's exactly what he does. He accepts risk by leaving Pemberton in his rear, and he's going to go ahead and turn and attack Jackson.
In the 14th, Grant's army survived the Confederate force side of Jackson and destroyed Pemberton's lines of supply and community. Johnson's forces scattered in the wind, rambled turned west toward Vicksburg.
Pemberton all of a sudden realizes Grant has turned west, and this is when Pemberton decides, I gotta stop and do battle. The numbers are largely equal, somewhere less than 30,000 on each.
If Ulysses S. Grant loses a stand-up fight, his army is in trouble. They have cast off most of their logistics. They are in Confederate territory. But if there is a way he can beat the Confederate army without having to storm Vicksburg, he is more than willing to do it.
Champion Hill, where Pemberton goes well. One of the highest points and all the ground. General Fulton has command there. Thousand Parkers and our plan, it should have been on the left.
Not just in space, because keep in mind that we're not just choose from the left, the right, the center, but in time. Because it's sequences of different activities. And that is really the short genius.
You're breaking Pemberton's line. Come up Pierce in the flank to the left and press him hard.
army, and this is going to drive the Confederates back into the defense of Vicksburg.
An enormous risk, but rather than to Vicksburg. But he is very desperate to beat peacefully the different Confederate forces that are trying to come to reinforce Vicksburg. Essentially, siege thereof. So that we could hold our position, enemy was limited in supplies of food and ammunition.
These men digging, Captain. Be done with it by nightfall.
Of the Vicksburg campaign. In 17 days, Grant's army marched 200 miles and won 5 battles. And now, we are talking about a siege. When Grant first settled into the operations, he digs a line opposite the Confederate one. You can cut off the key routes of supply to the state. And then in case a Confederate force came from his rear, he then dug another series of entrenchments facing the other way. And now he needed to enable our they recognized exactly the
Grant ordered his soldiers to begin sinking approach towards the Confederate forces. These had been what was called a fast roll. Normally a bundle of chains, vines, packed with dirt. All into the Confederate line. Very easy, but
Americans start to speak in army in hopes of finding some mechanism for freedom. Essentially what these African Americans do is they explicitly use the army and say, make use of this conflict.
If the logic of war is any resources, guns, cannon, fortifications, enemy is using something for their war effort. It can be legitimately taken. So by the end of the first year of the war, Lincoln has come to the emancipation as
In Grant's own personal life, the fact that he married into a family that was dependent on the system of slavery, his decision to grant freedom, the fact that during his time in Missouri, he's filling the soil with these new people, I think how Grant's life is actually an object lesson in the way that a person has to grapple with their faith and When Lincoln put out the Emancipation Proclamation,
It was amazing. One out of every four slave passengers made their way to freedom.
On the Emancipation Proclamation, that's the moment when Lincoln first, called black people to fight on. That's actually a huge deal. It has, great implications for that community.
So, beginning, you had the first appearance of black soldiers. Their first engagement that occurred during the Vicksburg campaign.
Fortunate indeed, Grant had established supply enclaves north of Kansas, and most of these supply enclaves were defended by regions including black and Confederates west of Vicksburg were ordered to do quote-unquote something on behalf of the garrison of Vicksburg. So on June 7th, the Confederate brigade was attacked the supply enclave as planned.
and it is at this moment that two things become very clear. That they have not been given the best training, nor have they been given the best weaponry to protect themselves.
They recognize by the color people, expectations were so low. The idea that black people fight the soldiers. I mean, this was like a man going to the moon. Lincoln said he can no longer consider his idea of going back to things being the way they were. The black men actually can't restore them.
And in fact, by the end of the Civil War, almost 200,000 African Americans, fight on the Union side.
Service Wyoming and Negro, we have added a powerful around it. Patient to have you grow and give credit.
Energy in any city is isolating the people you are besieging inside, causing them to use up both their military resources, but especially their food, to force them to capitulate. The consequence of this is the Grant's army will grow to over 70,000 troops over time, and it's a ratcheting of military growth. Now, the Confederate government is rather concerned about the situation. And Harrisburg believes that less focus needs to be placed on the east where things are going well, more focus needs to be put on the west where things are not going.
Bobby Lee's response is, even if I'd been through Pittsburgh, by the time they got there, it might be over. And Lee decides to go north, try to sneak a decisive engagement with the Federals for the Pennsylvania. At the same time, Grant keeps in touch up Vicksburg.
By the end of June, Confederate Army of Vicksburg seemed like a handful of seasonal rice fishing once a day per man. Even their water would be rationed, 1 cup per minute per day.
So now as the temperature of the summer gets hotter and hotter, Grant will dam up all the creeks that are going in there. They're being shelled by Union gunboats as well as Union batteries.
South of the beach, you have a civilian population trapped in the city, estimated about 2,000. Citizens lived underground in man-made caves, so escape the constant bombardment of Union cannon and heavy mortar. But the only time they came out of these caves is when the Union artillery received their morning, noon, and evening needs.
Grant knows full well they were suffering. They relished any of it. They really
Civilians at Vicksburg, who weeks earlier were able to get all the food they needed, were clearly starving. And they started eating anything that moved, rations. And by early July, it was clear that the Confederates were near the end of their rope.
July 3rd, person coming towards our line carrying a white flag. Glorious satisfaction.
Afternoon of July 3rd, at the very same time picket legions were storming over the stone wall at Gettysburg. I'm not terminated with received to render it.
Oh, Anderson. Really, General. Right. I propose no proposal. Wouldn't going to change. Mission further. Accept the parole. Only if my men walk away with all of their personal property. Maybe you mean right on. No slave league with you. You have to see. Unconditional surrender grant. And yet, here, he's paroled many that are there. And it shows what flexibility of mind he had. I think he makes the calculus of roughly 70 to 30,000. What are they going to tell me? He just got whipped.
Americans that have gone astray.
Because cares for people themselves. That really colors the way he deals with Confederate problems in the war. Vicksburg surrenders at the Mississippi. Lincoln says, honor flows again on the decks. The great thing is, the news comes to the same weekend of the victory of Banished. I did get it. You I never had any faith. Every general hope that they received. I now wish to acknowledge you were right. I was wrong. Yours very true. They
And their correspondence is quite they are both men of the West. And I think that they share a certain philosophy and perhaps a certain passion. And I think it really sets the terms for their future relationship. This victory was a culmination of a very long, full trial of France figuring out how by capturing what seemed an impregnable.
Campaign has been studied by military professionals ever since July of 1860. In fact, in the Army's warfighting name, it highlights the Vicksburg campaign as the most brilliant campaign ever waged on American soil. The war is often described as the last of the old wars, first of the modern wars, planned.
at Vicksburg, there's no question that Grant is one of these top generals. Lincoln said, "You'll be my man and I'll be his." Grant part of that new command. And in Chattanooga, there was a Union army that was essentially trapped. It's at this point that Lincoln decides he must call Grant into the situation.
The art of war is find out where your enemy is. You can strike him as hard as you can. Keep moving on.
My streaming bill hit $180 a month for channels I don't even watch. I didn't get mad. I got friendly.
I spent an hour on hold just because to reset my box. I didn't get mad. I got
My favorite plastic western disappeared overnight without warning. I didn't get mad. I got friendly.
Join the millions who got friends. 50 plus live channels, thousands of on-demand titles, all starting at just $6.99 a month. Start your free trial today.
The Union Army had moved all the way to Tennessee and captured Chattanooga. The Union Army then moved into Georgia.
back plus one.
First concern will easily increase. Winning a small engagement on the Confederate side of the Tennessee River to open up his supply lines. Then, like any boss that comes into a new company, Grant wants to get his team for it. And he immediately calls the 4 divisions of William Tecumseh Sherman to come to Chattanooga. The intention then is initiative and making it back against the Confederates and drive them away from Chattanooga.
During the Battle of Chattanooga, Grant is commanding Wolfe's army. Guy Sherman and George Thomas' army in Cumberland. He also joins Booker, who's coming in with a hitter.
That Hooker flanked their south, Sherman with his army, northern flank, and George Thomas with Bolton's center. 3 separate assaults on one position. At Chattanooga, his battle plan doesn't work the way he expected it to. But he's got the president's mind to process it and make decisions and adapt to things that he didn't expect to happen.
Sherman's stubborn. Thomas and men. We're going to attack the rifle pits below Missionary Ridge. Sherman needs help. Now.
Thomas' army had been much aligned and trapped. Grant gives the order with the hope that will, of course, start moving troops away from Sherman. The order was that once they seized the rifle pits, they should stop, reorganize, and then attack on Missionary Ridge. But they don't stop.
On-armored troops went correct. Firing on the and musket balls in the air to continue the press.
It was a fantastic victory. This is the battle that India hoped for. Protected, arranged, and awesome. The leaders of the Schumann offered a great triumph. Grant is now clearly and unambiguous. The general who looks like finding them.
Grant has eliminated 2 Confederate armies, Donaldson and Vicksburg. At Chattanooga, he combined 3 disparate armies in a single effort, so his technical competencies were beyond reproach.
In Chattanooga, he reverses other very desperate situations with future forces. That's what ultimately then leaves Lincoln brain Grant. By March of 1864, Lincoln's found Chattanooga. Lieutenant General. That's Washington, home the full rank of Lieutenant General.
He is to be in command of all armies. This is novel.
The bill restoring the grade of Lieutenant General of the Army has passed.
Martian mission.
Never meet each other face to face until Grant shows up in Washington. He's promoted to lieutenant general. His ability to advise Lincoln and to guide the whole nation's efforts through the war, that was a question mark. President. General Grant. Not only do you continue to fly, you might also protect your plane. Oh. So, we'll go after Lee. We'll go after him until it's finished. It all depends on you.
President told me that all he ever wanted was to know him.
Lincoln had gone through about every other senior general in the Army one time. And finally, Lincoln finds his general who will actually fight. And Grant is truly one of the great battle captains of all time. He is someone who achieved brilliant, tactically operational, strategic, tactical level is with commanded multiple brigades like Fort Henry or Donald in the early stages or in the West. We should see this as a cultural example of that. And then strategic. Coming east, he for the first time then develops a true strategic campaign for all of the Union forces.
Grant's idea when he becomes commanding general, all of the Union forces to act as harmony. Wants to move on Mobile Bay, one of the last Confederate corps. He wants Sherman to advance on Atlanta. Know about the breadbasket of the Confederacy east. Benjamin Butler will come up the James River and get at Richmond to the south, hopefully dividing some of Lee's attention. And then finally, the Army of the Potomac will head to Robbie Lee and Richmond. It's those five pieces acting in concert that is his original vision for how this war should go.
Now they've become very good with the smaller population, moving troops from one place. Simultaneously attacked many Confederate positions they would not be able to place as many. France, the ability to fight different armies, but also direct instructions of Robert's army, people of Confederate nationalism. The army had countless brilliant tactics. Well, there was confidence. It is the Supreme Court that bound that army together. And spirits are high and ready for it. Robert E. Lee is born with Zion's two of the forces. And many ways, he is
There's none of that. There's no solution of the sky, I want. But, when I see you on the battlefield, none of that matters. It's just me and you.
All of Grant's success had been in the Western Theater. And everybody would argue, you're not out in the Western Theater anymore. You're fighting Bobby Lee. Of course, you can flip that coin and say, Bobby Lee is now fighting Grant.
No. George Gordon's son, is going to latch on like a bulldog. Robert. That are not as an ordinary, like a merchant, then his eyes. Old eyes, granted somehow have, and they do the same story. With his eyes, when Grant gives you a straight order, obey. When you have information for Grant, give it to him straight. And above all, don't say sir too much. It's not interesting.
Most of the winner of the or and the Confederates have been glaring at each other, waiting for the bring the conference at the campaign weekend. Grant wants to the South and engage Confederate forward. Before he does that, he has to go across the Rapids, go through an area deemed as almost leave hunting ground for Union Army.
That may have brought some big things in the West, but this is Virginia. Very strong, yes, sir. In that, they can play for Washington. And if you cross the Rapids, Cousins will. I can't imagine he'd be fool enough. We're with him, but good. General Ross. And Mexico. Do not underestimate him. Day and every hour to him. There's sort of a sense that, okay, Robert E. Lee is the champion of music. Tried challenger after challenger after challenger. And now we're bringing in our best guy from
Frankly, you get the rich with the West, Washington's exposed. This South, if you leave by going through the wilderness, that's how it's big heavily for us to go through there. If you quickly get out the other side, get in the open class, and leaving Washington undefended. And Meade, I think Lee is getting her. I'd like to finish the job. Wherever he goes, you'll follow.
Council forces across the rapid area. You've only swapped out past the evening hours. Jackson pulled ahead through the wilderness. After the Animal Hill is out in the orange flag road. And the view on the set side. Yes, sir.
army that's come and fought there against obviously the battle of Canfield earlier in the war. Battle of Canfield, so his property he is going to violate all kind of military principles by his army in the face of a larger enemy, and they'll outnumber 2-1. Will drive people on the back of property.
Canterville battlefield and the wilderness battlefield are pretty much ground out. During the initial phase of the wilderness campaign, ran from the army across the river to the remains of the battle. Confederate Army numbers approximately 6,000. He knows he's outnumbered, but he knows he's pile them up. The superior numbers won't account for anything. Both sides are confident. Confederates, they've rebounded to clear the peak from Gettysburg. Coming off that victory at Gettysburg, they're ready to follow it up that victory. That
fighting in the wilderness, and there is a community who was part of the army. During the going on the old bull book. Union Army is not going to Fred firmly believes that if he can retain the initiative, he can force the other armies to act. He believes that the center army is therefore he's going to drive those competitors. Long lines of last years. Visibility is one yard. Throw in the smoke and avoid the battle, and now it's even more confusing. A very dry spring. As you think of them firing a musket, there's going to be a flash of fire, and I'll take one spark. At the end of this fight, they have to now listen and then being dead as they're burned alive by the fire. And if they have another body, vibration, that is something that really sticks with them for the rest of their lives. Similar to the battle they fought in Chancellorsville the year before, almost the exact same location. And that battle had ended with the army generated cells
And like the other generals justified in breaking off and going back to the good.
When we casually enough.
No men on the top. Oh yeah. You're bored. You're waiting for reinforcements. Back whenever it's done. Yeah. Once again.
forces were successful on the Chilean border. They catch the Confederate Third Corps under ATO by surprise. They push them a good mile. Looks like these right flankers about to cave in.
They're losing ground. The long street's moving in from the west. Yeah, now get out of it. Those Texas boys will stand and fight all day. Palm Street has arrived with reinforcements. We may counterattack, let him. Let's stick it out. Keep taking our land. Force us out. Get in advance. I'm tired of hearing about all this. Somebody think of it. It'll come from land in the rear and both flanks at the same time. Go back to your command. About what we have done.
Saved the day, in the nick of time. If Longstreet had actually attended this great betting, and he is the old warlord.
Confederates planned reading in mind. Also take an entrance. Ultimately, series of full scale.
Jackson, by his own men, shot in the neck, choking to death on his own blood.
By the end of 2 days of combat, the Union Army had sustained about 17,000 men killed, captured, and struggles. The Confederates are about 11,000. Grant had lost no more men in the 2 days of wilderness than he did in 6 days of Shiloh.
This is a particularly horrifying battle, not only just for casualties, but as far as his training, what that meant was Grant went into his flung himself down on the ground. There was a need for some emotional release from catharsis, and Grant had never jumped outside of his character before.
Read over the enemy. They gains.
We gave him hell, didn't we? Gave us. I told Longstreet we'll survive.
Count say Grant's packing up. Finally retreating. Won't see him here again.
Nothing to help.
Have you ever met grass?
No.
No. I think so. Yeah, you know he's not retreating. Not for retreating. I now felt the full weight of children. Go after we, you'll go after him until he finishes. It all depends on you.
You know what?
Dave, what would you in Rome, Virginia? And their office numbers in the Army of Virginia have fought themselves to standstill. Standstill like that happened. The result was the Union Army was as it had happened literally 1 year before the Battle of Chancellorsville. The question by the big soldiers was, what direction is France going to take? And wrong, we find out and continue the other thing. Not the critical intersection in the building. Easy. The threat of the Confederate camp. Richmond. Soldiers waiting to see what direction. If you turn to the left, you're going to be retreating back to the river. If you turn to the right, they're all wheeling around now. And it took me first on random part of the Indian casualties behind I think that basic victory is something that communicates itself to the truth.
That is a tactical loss. This is not a loss. This is the first step. So as he heads south, Grant will find in a scope and scale beyond anybody's experience. We actually see the changing character of war here. Technology starts to be seen that ironclads, railroads, however, there's this unchanged about what might happen. Veterans are fighting for hearth and home and for this cause of the Southern way of life. Well, look at what the Northerners are fighting. They're fighting for this idea. The nation is new. We're largely made They have come here because of and that idea that all men are created equal. If it doesn't exist here, it doesn't exist anywhere. And therefore, they're willing to fight.
Inspired by the fact what indicating to the men they have passed through
That may have won some victories in the West. Start to wrap it out in the world. This has to end. That's what's pulled they get from the wilderness. Grass backing up. Shooting man.
Will really know the greatest general of his time. Ulysses S. Grant is this perfectly average, humble individual from a poor, hard-traveled family.
A lot of hard times and failures in life.
So he's got dogs, conservation gang, bulldogs, and talent.
The agriculture level, not the highest rank in the community farm. Funny, terrible battle.
lead the nation towards justice forever.
The unheroic hero of our greatest 100 kings in America.
Truly, Americans and the origin. Increases to the nation, for the value we are and who we aspire to be.
Marches on the Grant is going to be strong. The Russian army. Because Grant the destruction of his army and the destruction of his country. At the beginning of the campaign, the nation on the army march. That's his never happened. After the wilderness, Grant heads south, and it's just staying in combat. He just keeps seeing these opportunities. Act. Rain, weather was miserable, but they just go.
soldiers will produce 45,000 Union casualties, 35,000 U.S. casualties. Now, France is arguably exhausted. Tiny Grand region, supercross races, full car races. These soldiers understand keenly what the heck and it's more loss or rivers of blood.
You're a soldier. Think our chances are good. When we have heartbreaking stories of men writing on paper, today was the day I was killed in cold coffee. Saying that inside of it. And Grant still believes that Lee's army is all over the world. All I have to do is push a little bit harder and they will break.
Thanks, Brandon. Oh. I guess, good.
Cold Harbor. Robert Lee's army has set a crossfire. It is enormous. And within only 5 hours, Grant's army has thousands of men. One soldier. Union soldier likened that combat at Cold Harbor to a volcanic blast. There wasn't war, it was brutal. Grant is a very aggressive general, and we see that in several mistakes, including Harbor. So we killed Cold Harbor and Price, and you had faith to have Grant as their commander.
When my streaming bill hit $180 a month for channels I don't even watch, I didn't get mad. I got friendly.
I spent an hour on hold just before we reset my box. I didn't get mad. I died.
My favorite classic western disappeared overnight without warning. I didn't get mad. I got friendly. Plus live channels, thousands of on-demand titles, all starting at just $6.99 a month. Start your free trial today.
Have always been very classic about Cold Harbor. And it's whatever we need to become as a problem.
By 1864, people are tired. There is no clear winner and there is no clear end and fight. And people are tired of it.
Northern public was crazy. Initially, morale was pushing. Tiny Grand region, Cold Harbor.
provide the energy or sleep to react when
into your body, especially air. Great box. Not really. Fine.
something that nobody thought could be constructed. An actual pontoon bridge across a 2,000-foot span of the James River. The bridge consists of pontoon boats, rather large boats that have excellent voyages, strung together and connected by wooden planks, and through these bridges you can catch not only soldiers but also artillery. This largest pontoon bridge is built during the entire war, more than 7 hours. Think about it. You can cross 100,000 men across the James River, including with wagons and artillery. Engineering feat that's remarkable.
So, Grant crossed the James River, was assaulting on crucial railhead Petersburg, Virginia.
Petersburg is the logistics hub and transportation hub. It's connected to all the supplies that come up from the south. It's going to make Boston, let alone Virginia City. So Grant, understanding, until I threatened Petersburg back to Britain. And now, they're talking about Virginia.
Why are there a Pennsylvania boys and coal mines? A fall. Sorry, sir. You get a shaft, button movement, and go to the powder. Roll those rings. Die high.
Break from the fortification. Better way, I know it is.
Look, my boys, they have to consider.
If the line is broken, move quickly after the fire. Artillery ready to support the charge.
The whole most of this is full of powder.
It looks as if Grant had been familiar with the use of mines tunneling under enemy positions at Vicksburg. He tried it several times with limited success. As far as they get it working, they feared that there was a mine tunneling under. They dug counter mines down to try to drop in and onto the Union troops. They could never find any mine tunnel.
Very wild rumors of what's going on. Gathered me in mind the whole rest of it. No volcanoes. Do not know what motive. Is ready to be exploded. I wanted to take the occasion to carry Peter.
They packed the mine. Better 8,000 pounds of boat. Better blast a hole in their earthwork.
It starts burning. They pack sandbags. The explosion doesn't come out toward the Union troops. massive hole in the Confederate front.
Ready to launch frontal assault.
Despite all the thought that went into this attack, Grant's commanders put the worst possible guy in command, a guy named James Leslie, known to be a drunken and coward, in command of the attack.
Problem. On the round rim of the crater has planned. James Leslie blundered his right into the middle of the crater, and it becomes a virtual turkey shoot.
I expected our troops to put themselves in the crater at all and push on to the top of the hill. You've given us everything.
They send in the colored troopers. Nothing excited the rage of a Confederate soldier like the sight of an African American soldier wielding a musket.
They just start killing these guys wholesale. Many blacks that try to surrender are shot or bayoneted. Even white Union officers, realizing that they also have a death sentence for leading black troops, they turn their pistols on their own soldiers to try to save them.
So at the crater, what you have is visual massacre. Charlie recalled his delight at bayoneting these African American soldiers. Fallout, water.
Grant is really at fault. Delegated so much that it interfered with the execution of the experiment of the crater, because he knows how important the victory is during the election of
1864 is an election.
Abraham Lincoln running for re-election on the Republican ticket. Democratic was the following. Running on a platform of peace.
The Democrats before want to end the war off, and they are fine with letting the Confederates go.
McClellan was on record that he was going to fight. Grant considered this little short of treason. Don't forget that there was not even one support for his efforts in the Northern States. Back in 1863, New York City, huge draft room. A lot of them around here that didn't seem as if the Union would prevail. So now these only hope was that Lincoln would be defeated, McClellan would win, and sue for peace.
Have peace on any terms. Now, now, slave already. It would demand a treaty. Later.
So, before the war is now no longer about arranging, now it's war. And with the election, everything is
No, Grant. I told you I this passage in the crater. Every day I hear from the press that I'm too timid, too tyrannical, too weak, too tall. I realize how considerable depends on you.
General Sherman is the threshold of my life.
And I am at the threshold
uncertain of how they will make this war. We see that in how Grant wins his pains. He's really, I think, the first general that Lincoln had that had an overall strategy for the entire war.
I mean, this is still a very good 5-6 quote. So, Union needs decisive wins.
One of the key prongs of grand strategy exceptional is, of course, to take Atlanta. You don't topple Georgia, which was one of the top manpower delivering states behind the Confederate war effort, and you don't topple Atlanta, which is a hub of industry for the South, then it makes it possible to sustain a Confederate war for prolonged. This ain't no fail. When you give it to the person you develop the level of trust, and who you know hard enough, and also will do the intended what you want them to do rather than getting them. And Sherman is
Member for General Grant was showing full proximity of the Sherman. Not yet able to penetrate the city's fortifications.
Williams comes to Sherman. The military division of Mississippi through northwest Georgia, targeting the industrial part of Georgia, that is, machine shops, the mills, the factories that were keeping the Confederate Army in the West going.
Grant, from afar, choreographed effort. And Grant constituted via telegraph, like more than 1,000 miles that is between them.
You can hold tight as you are now. Look at that army.
Sherman is approaching Atlanta. Grant is first. Done. We need to take Atlanta before the election comes.
They've lost a good many weapons. See the president. Took a little while before it did. I will take it.
That country of Rome. Sherman drives on Atlanta, delivering Atlanta. And effectively, you do have some aspects of hope. You're about collapsing the wills that are deep. Realize you are being.
All of Atlanta boosts northern morale. Will now begin to see that Union victory is, while not inevitable, at least tight. It's enormous now. Or what ultimately gave Lincoln that election on the battlefield was Sherman captured. This was part of Grant's grand strategy, how to bring about it. Grant has a brilliant plan. He's going to move multiple armies simultaneously to bring about maximum pressure on him, while also holding down Robert E. much on Harvey, Petersburg.
When Grant starts to settle into Petersburg by putting Lee into a seat in Kansas. And Robert E. Lee cannot maneuver. Robert E. Lee that's not nearly as dangerous. So if I can the rest of the Confederacy while we stand here, watch this all take place.
The Grant decides, Bill Sheridan up the Shenandoah Valley, threatening the byline run, threatening the breadbasket of Confederacy that for 3 years had supplied the army.
The General Sheridan, do all the damage to railroads and crossings. We want the Shenandoah Valley to remain a barren. Move quickly with the goal of destroying all in your
After Philip Sheridan destroys the Shenandoah Valley, moved to come to Sherman, marches Georgia. Grant famously says, Confederacy is a hollow shell. I know it, and Sherman is about it.
General Sherman, if he was satisfied, destroying all the railroads.
sending a message to the Army. You guys hold out here in Richmond. You hold out here in Petersburg. But we're just tearing up the guts of the Confederacy.
Robert E. Lee's army becoming malnourished. His men are living in conditions that are ripe for disease. The biological decline of his men